In the summer of 1920, in downtown Boston, thousands of people lined up to hand this man their life savings. They pushed through the doors, waving fistfuls of cash, begging to give it away. And at the center of it all stood a small, smiling man in a fine suit, promising to make them rich. His name would soon become a word we still use for the biggest cons on earth. But that summer, he was simply the man who could double your money. He was a charming Italian immigrant, quick with a smile and quicker with a promise. He had arrived in America years before with almost nothing in his pockets. He had drifted through odd jobs, small schemes, and hard times, always looking for the one big idea. And in 1920 in Boston, he believed he had finally found it. The offer was simple, and it was staggering. Give him your money, and in 90 days, it would be doubled. 50% return in 45 days, twice your money in 90. No bank on earth could promise that, but he did with a confident smile. And people believed him. First a few, then hundreds, then a flood. This is the story of the man whose name became the word for the con itself. To understand how it worked, you have to understand his story, the story he told everyone. It began with something small and boring, a postal coupon. In those days, you could buy a special voucher in one country and redeem it for stamps in another. They were called international reply coupons, and their prices, he claimed, did not always match across borders. Buy a coupon cheaply in one country, he said, and cash it in another for far more. Do that at a huge scale, and you could turn a small fortune into a massive one. On paper, to an ordinary person, it sounded like genius, a perfectly legal gap in the system. And that story was the hook. It sounded complicated enough to be real and clever enough to be true. But here is the truth that almost no one stopped to check. The scheme could not possibly work at the scale he claimed. To back the money pouring in, tens of millions of these coupons would have had to be in circulation. In reality, only a few tens of thousands are believed to have existed at all. The math simply did not exist. He was barely trading coupons, if at all. So where did the returns come from? This is the heart of the con. When a new investor handed over their cash, he did not invest it in anything. He simply used that fresh money to pay off the earlier investors. The first people really did get their profits, not from coupons, but from the next person in line. And those happy, wealthy winners went out and told everyone they knew. The money was never growing. It was only moving in a circle from new hands to old. The scheme made essentially no money at all. It only shuffled it from one pocket to another. As long as more people kept lining up, the circle could keep turning. And in 1920, they kept lining up. By the summer of 1920, the story had caught fire across Boston. Word spread from neighbor to neighbor, from factory floor to dinner table. The man who could double your money became the talk of the whole city. People pawned their possessions and emptied their savings to get in. Police officers invested, widows invested, whole families handed over everything they had. By some accounts, tens of thousands of people had given him their money, around 40,000 as reported. At its peak, the cash was said to pour in at up to $1 million a week. His office was mobbed. Clerks stuffed the bills into drawers, into baskets, into wastebaskets. There was so much money coming in that they could barely count it fast enough. And the small immigrant who had arrived with nothing was now on paper a millionaire. He bought a grand mansion, fine suits, a chauffeured car, gold in his pockets. He was celebrated in the streets, cheered as a financial genius, a hero of the common man. The crowds adored him. To them, he was proof that the impossible was real. But every dollar of that empire rested on a simple, deadly condition. It could only survive as long as more new money kept coming in than went out. And then, one question began to spread, a dangerous, simple question. Where was all this money actually coming from? A Boston newspaper, the Boston Post, began to look closely at the numbers. A financial analyst pointed out what should have been obvious. The math could not work. There were nowhere near enough coupons in the world to explain the fortune he claimed. If he was not really trading anything, then the returns could only come from new investors. And that meant it was not an investment at all. It was a trap waiting to spring. The newspaper printed its doubts, and a whisper of fear ran through the crowds. The very same people who had rushed to give him money now rushed to take it back. Lines formed again outside his office, but this time they came to withdraw. And this is where every scheme like his must finally break. There was no real money. There never had been. only the circle now collapsing. He tried to smile to reassure them, to hand back cash and calm the panic. For a few days he paid out, drawing on the last of what was left. But the flood of new money had stopped, and the circle had nothing left to turn on. In August of 1920, it was over. He was arrested. The investigations revealed the truth. There were no real profits. There never had been. Investors are believed to have lost on the order of $20 million, a fortune then and now. He was imprisoned and in the end deported, dying poor years later, far from the crowds who once cheered. But his name never left. It had become the word we still use for the con he made famous. He did not invent the trick of paying the old with the new. He simply became its face forever. A man who made a fortune and a legend from a scheme that never made a single dollar. He promised to double their money, and instead he only moved it in a circle until the circle broke. That is crooked genius.